release of Ultra Turles, the meta has been impacted quite a bit. So now would be the perfect time to update the current top 10 best units in the game. This ranking obviously takes into account a unit's value in the current landscape of PvP, as well as their access to top tier teams. And of course, this goes without saying that this is simply my opinion, so feel free to let me know if you agree or disagree with any of the placements in the comments. Before we jump into the ranking, let's speed run some of these honorable mentions. Garlic Jr., Corrupted Merge Zamasu, Fusing Gogeta Blue, Super 17, Ultra Gohan. Now there probably is a lot more honorable mentions I could add, but we're going to be sticking with these 5 for now. So coming in at the number 10 spot, we have Green Evil Boo. Now, like I said, you could argue him with a couple other units in the honorable mention. I was looking at Garlic Jr. specifically, but I decided to go with Evil Boo at the end of the day because Evil Boo has a proven track record of being an optimal unit on the Majin Buu Saga team. For those of you who know, Majin Buu Saga team is a really good team. Prior to Ultra Turles' release, you could argue that that was the best team in the game just because of how they're able to produce damage and sustain with the help of units like Ultimate Gohan that does all that in one unit. Evil Boo being a surprisingly good tank. Well, it's not really that surprising because he is a defense type unit, but he can also still dish out some really good damage, and he's very annoying to face, obviously, right? And then being a 1% spark unit, the ability to cancel buffs is a really good pairing, especially with Kid Buu, who has access to 2 units that can cancel buffs, so his endurance is completely safe. And if you're going up against Ultra Gogeta 4, he can easily cancel the buffs. You can switch out to any of those other units, and the ultimate is completely safe there. So Evil Boo working pretty well on the Majin Buu Saga team definitely gives him a spot in the top 10. Next up, we have Super Baby 2 at the number 9 spot. Now, honestly, I was potentially planning on putting him on the 10th spot. You could argue he is at the 10th spot and bump up Evil Boo because I do think you see Evil Boo a lot more than Super Baby 2. Honestly, I don't even remember the last time I faced Super Baby 2, but he is definitely good, especially at higher stars, working with the GT composition of Omega Shenron and Ultra Gogeta Blue. And he works pretty well against Ultra Gogeta Blue as well because being a yellow unit, he has a unique gauge that can lock him in, all that stuff. So Super Baby 2 is definitely good. His gauge is aging very well, being able to just reduce your gauge, reduce the enemy vanishing gauge to show their cards, and then constantly tank like that. It's very good. I personally can't reap the benefits of this because this is a unit that is very star dependent. So if you have him at lower stars and you need him to be a tanky unit, he's not going to be that unit because you kind of want him in the red star territory. But if you have him in the red star territory, it works out pretty well. And especially since there aren't really that many strong red units, there are a few. But even especially with the release of Ultra Turles, the red units are taking kind of a back seat. For example, Super 17 was sort of making a comeback in the top 10 here, but with the release of Ultra Turles, you probably don't want to have him running around. And then L of Broly, you don't really see him that much in PvP anyway, so yellows are kind of safe to run right now, so that's why Super Baby 2 is still in the top 10. At the number 8 spot, we have Ultra Golden Frieza. Now, this guy made a massive comeback, pun intended. Obviously, he is the first unit to have the comeback mechanic, and that was going to allow him to age really well. You probably didn't see him that much in the last couple of months, especially after the anniversary, but with the release of Ultra Turles, they form a really good comeback duo, right? Frieza can easily cover Ultra Turles' weakness to green, and then you can add in any nice little red unit. For example, Super 17, you can add in Corrupted Merge Zamasu, who works pretty well. You can even add the LFZ Broly, Tak Piccolo, and Goku can work, so there's quite a bit of options you can run as your third option, or you can simply go with another unit. But Golden Frieza having that comeback mechanic, it's always going to be good. One of the main reasons you didn't see Golden Frieza that often is because his teams were kind of lacking. Lineage of Evil, you're not going to be seeing that. Powerful Opponent, he could have still worked a bit on Powerful Opponent. Then on movies, pretty much leader slotting Ultra Gogeta or like Ultimate Gohan, to be honest. But with Turles, you can work it pretty well with him. You can still opt to just run Gogeta or Ultimate Gohan, but Golden Frieza is a very good option to run as well. At the number 7 spot, we have Zenkai LF Kid Buu. Now, you can argue that Kid Buu could be above the next unit, but I'll simply have him at number 7 because I think it's a decent spot for him. Obviously, like I mentioned, the Majin Buu Saga team is very good, and Kid Buu is just relentless with his blast damage, man. He does a lot of damage and fast. Straight off the gate, he can just bombard you with damage. Green cards can replenish your vanish, and he draws many green cards. And he's paired up with Ultimate Gohan, who could draw green cards for him. The amount of green cards this team generates is actually ridiculous, and Kid Buu can take full advantage of it. Although you do want to save a couple of them for Ultimate Gohan because he has a pretty nasty green card as well. But don't sleep on Kid Buu. He can deal a lot of damage, and especially with not that many green units prevalent in the meta, with the exception of, like I said, Evil Boo, who's on his team, and then Omega Shenron. It works out quite well, and of course, can't forget that he has one of the best purple units in the game to cover him in the form of Ultimate Gohan. And like I mentioned when I was talking about Evil Boo, both his partners have the ability to cancel buffs, so his endurance is completely safe, especially against units like Super Vegito, who would want to rush immediately. That endurance can fully take the hit of the Rising Rush and still survive. So Kid Buu, definitely a good option, a crazy Zenkai, and he's gonna have his spot at the number 7 in this top 10. Next up at number 6, we have Fusing Super Vegito. Now, this might be a bit of a shock for some people. I personally don't think this guy is top 5 anymore, unfortunately, and it really has to do with the fact that there are just way too many units having the ability to cancel buff. It seems like every unit that's dropping nowadays has the ability to just simply cancel buff, and that impacts Vegito's guaranteed Rising Rush a bit. Now, obviously, having a guaranteed rush, regardless of what you're doing, is always going to be a plus, right? Having an unguessable rush is just insane, right? A lot of the value that came with his rush is the ability to just completely remove someone from the game, right? Just having that first combo, tag switch, cover null, all that stuff, and getting that Rising Rush within that first combo, and then rushing someone, and they can't do anything about it. That was what gave this guy so much value and brought him to the number 2, number 3 spots in the meta, right? But since a lot of people, not only is there a lot of Rising Rush control unit in the form of Indestructible, Comeback, Endurance, but all those units have teammates or they themselves have the ability to cancel buffs. So his rush, although it's going to land, it might not kill them, and, you know, they can do something after that, right? Now, on the flip side, you could also argue that his guaranteed rush is also an asset. I mean, it's always been an asset, but it's also gained a bit of value simply because we are entering in a meta where a lot of matches go to timer, and that's because of units like Ultra Turles, you know, Ultimate Gohan, Omega Shenron, all these guys that can just tank, heal, and sustain, right? And because of that, you're going to need to rack up some damage. So Super Vegito being able to guarantee that Rising Rush, which you could potentially get 2 or maybe even 3. I haven't never seen it, but you could potentially get 3, 2 at least at the bare minimum, especially with these matches going to timer. You're going to be wanting to rack up that damage, and since the opponent can't guess this rush, you're going to be able to gain some more additional damage, and you could potentially guess the opponent's rush, which will reduce their damage. So you could say that although his Rising Rush has diminished in value, it also gained a bit of value because he's able to accumulate that damage. So it's kind of like a double-edged sword, but it kind of works out for him in this case. So now we're entering into the top 5, and at the number 5 spot, I have LF Tree of Might Goku. Now, for this one as well, I would want to preface that you can interchange him with the person that's going to be above him, which I'll talk about in a bit. But for me, I'll have him at the number 5 spot simply because his value did go up with the release of Turles. Like, he's one of the best partners you can have with Ultra Turles. He was already a very good counter to Ultra Gogeta because of his his unique gauge. Whenever you like lock in or anything, he applies a bunch of debuffs, and him being a yellow unit, so that's really good. But something that I've noticed that is very, very powerful is his ability to cancel buff on standby. Sometimes you have to just go into these matches assuming everyone can cancel buff nowadays. It's kind of ridiculous. I really don't like the fact that they drop so many units with this ability, but it is what it is. But this guy can do it on standby. You don't even need to have him on the field. So let's say you're fighting, you have like Omega Shenron or something, or any unit with an endurance like Kid Buu, like I said, who doesn't have the ability to cancel buff, and he gets rushed, then you have Tree of Might Goku on the standby that can just cancel the buff, and you don't even need to switch out. So it's only available one time, but that one time can really save you. If you're facing this guy, you probably want to quote-unquote waste someone's ultimate to get rid of that buff, so that way you can utilize something else. So him having that definitely gives him some value there. And like I said, he's like the perfect partner to Ultra Turles, and with him, they form a really nasty Movie Sagas team. So I can see a lot of people bring his value even higher than what I have. I've seen lists where he's like at number 1, which is crazy. I personally don't think he's at that level yet. Although this is taking into account their teams, I also want to focus on their individual aspects, and just he's not to the level where I would say he's like Ultra Gogeta or Ultimate Gohan or Ultra Turles. I just don't sense that sort of, him taking over the game kind of superiority from him. So he's a really good unit to have as a second or third member, but I would never consider him the main option. And that's who I kind of specifically want to keep as the top tier dogs, right? So that's why I have him at the number 5 spot. And you can argue him even at the number 4 spot, because at the number 4 spot, we have Omega Shenron. So like I said, these guys can be pretty much interchangeable, and I would be completely okay with that. But I would give the edge to Omega Shenron simply because of his Indestructible. Indestructible is very, very useful in this meta. He's a green unit dominated by purple units, and he's thriving right now. His best teammates are Ultra Gogeta, Ultra Turles, some of the best units in the game. And if you really want, you can leader slot him on the Majin Buu Saga team, get rid of Evil Buu, and then run like fucking Omega Shenron, Ultimate Gohan, Kid Buu. It works out pretty well. Or even Powerful Opponent, have it with Ultimate Gohan on the leader slot. He works so well. He has access to so many teams. He has access to Fusion Warriors, GT, Powerful Opponent. You can leader slot him on anything. He's a really, really good leader slot option. And with his access to neutral on cover change, he can honestly switch into a Gogeta Ultimate and still tank it. You saw that in my video yesterday where I just swapped him out into a Gogeta Ultimate and he didn't even die. He didn't even pop his indestructible. So despite being green, which I would argue is probably the worst color alongside red, probably give it to a red, but green is definitely down there as well. It's probably one of the worser colors, but even despite being a green unit, he's still thriving, having access to multiple meta teams and being a core option on those multiple meta teams. He obviously deserves a spot in the top 5, top 4. You can potentially even argue above. I've seen some tier lists where he's in the top 3. I wouldn't go that far because, like I said, he's never the main option on the team, and that's something that I want to keep in mind of when I'm counting these top 3, top 5 units. He's never the main option, so that's why I don't have him in the top 3, but top 4, I think it's a really good spot for him. And I didn't even mention this, but his value technically did even increase a bit more because Turles is blue, right? So you have to add that as well in his value. So Omega Shenron comfortably in the top 4 spot. Let's move on into the top 3. Now moving into the top 3 at the number 3 spot. You might be shocked, I'm sure you will be, but it's going to be Ultra Super Saiyan 4 Gogeta. Yes, he is at the number 3 spot for me on this list here. Turles did bring a big impact to Gogeta. Not only does he give Triku a lot of value, Tree of Might Goku, I don't like the name Triku, but I'll say it because it's shorter. He gives him a lot of value because Tree of Might Goku was already a really good counter to Ultra Gogeta, but he became even more valuable with the release of Turles, right? Because he's a really good partner for this Triku, right? But outside of that, like I said, with the abundance of units that can cancel buff, you can just get rid of all Gogeta's buff when he goes for the ultimate, and it just doesn't do as much damage. Now, obviously, you could potentially still one-shot people, but it'll remove like his neutrality, it'll remove all his buffs, and the ultimate just ends up not one-shotting like it used to. Not to mention that Gogeta is a bit squishy. Now, obviously, he has access to his unique gauge, which whenever it pops, it heals him up, but outside of that, he can take a lot of damage. And there are certain instances where you can deal enough damage before his unique gauge pops. Now, obviously, this is like during his second or third usage when he's more closer to losing his HP, not at the start of it. But there are many instances where I just toss in a blue card or an ultimate, and it just kills him straight up before you can even fill up his unique gauge. So his tanking has definitely fallen off a bit, especially after losing his featured boost. So that's something to keep in mind of. His damage is still really good. Green card is still really good, which is why he's still at the number 3 spot. It's nothing to take away from him. He's still a top 3 unit, and you could still argue him potentially top 2. Maybe even the best unit still, but I personally have him at the number 3 spot because Fusion Warrior has definitely taken a hit with a lot of these units. Vegito's value going down a bit, like I mentioned. So Gogeta as well, going down a bit. GT, you could still argue GT's a solid team. Super Baby 2, Omega Shenron, Gogeta, still very, very good, but their value is decreasing as well. You can obviously leader slot him like on the movies team with Turles. That could work out. I've never tried it, but I'm pretty sure it works out. Ultra Gogeta is a pretty solid leader slot option, but you would usually want to use a unit like Omega Shenron or Ultimate Gohan that provides damage utility like that for the team as a whole than just another damage dealer, because every team has damage dealers, right? You don't really need another one like Ultra Gogeta, right? So although you could leader slot him on those teams, you have better options for the leader slot, right? Triku definitely does put a dent in his value, and then Turles as well. And with the rise of other teams moving up in the meta and his teams slightly going down, I had to bump him down a bit in the rankings. So for me, this is kind of okay. I don't feel that quote-unquote fear when going up against Ultra Gogeta anymore, especially if I'm using units like Turles. It just doesn't strike me as scary anymore or annoying. So as a consequence, I had to drop him off a bit to the number 3 spot. This is nothing to this isn't me discrediting him at all. I still use him quite a bit because Fusion Warrior is my main team. So don't take this the wrong way, but Ultra Gogeta, I will have him at the number 3 spot. Number 2, we have Ultimate Gohan. Now, Gohan, I always had a feeling Gohan was going to be the best aging unit of the anniversary. And that's just simply looking at his kit, man. This guy's ridiculous. I don't know why they had to make it go. They could have made this God Goku and everyone would have been happy. But Ultimate Go-1, we don't give a fuck about this guy. But I'm tired of talking about him, but we have to because he's consistently always at the top of these lists. Now, you could have argued that a lot of people even had Ultimate Gohan above Gogeta even prior to Turles releasing. So now I think a lot more people are seeing that his value is always going to be at sky high just because of all the intangible stuff he can do. Not simply his damage, but constant green cards, constant blue cards, and the blue cards spawning the green cards, and then the green cards giving him vanish, the fucking main ability reducing enemy vanish, and then you could just nuke them with the ultimate. It's always ridiculous. Arts power reduction, neutral whenever the opponent launches a special move, ultimate, awaken arts, rising rush, whatever, sub count reduction, like heals whenever they do that. Like, you almost can't kill him. You can't kill him because he just constantly does this. It's kind of annoying. He's very annoying to face, let me tell you. He's very annoying to face. It's always a mission to just get rid of his endurance first, and then you could start actually trying to kill him because of everything he does when people drop their big moves, right? So just an annoying unit to face regardless of the meta. He's going to age very well. Hybrids obviously has access to that, but he's obviously not run on hybrids that much. It's mainly Majin Buu Saga, and like I said, I would argue this is the best unit to leader slot on any of your teams. Majin Buu Saga, Sun Family with Tree of Might Goku. You can leader slot him on the sagas from the movie team, Turles, Tree of Might Goku, and this guy works pretty damn well. If you want, you can even leader slot him on GT or Fusion, double purple. I mean, maybe you wouldn't want to do that with Tree of Might Goku running around, but that's still an option. He's just a phenomenal all-around unit that does practically everything, and he does it really well. I guess the one thing that you could say is a flaw with him is his tanking. So, like, if you don't drop any big moves like ultimates, blue cards, or rising rush, and you just simply combo him, then that could potentially just straight up defeat him. And at that point, you would probably want to switch out before they do something. But other than that, there isn't really any negatives for me to say on this unit. You could honestly, potentially even rank him at the #1 spot, and I wouldn't really have that much of an issue, but I personally wouldn't. But this Gohan, man, I think he's going to probably stay in the top 5 until Legends Festival, it looks like. We'll just have to wait and see what units they drop moving forward, but this guy, he's ridiculous, man. And finally, we move on to the #1 spot, and it's going to be Ultra Turles. Now, before I get into anything, this guy reminds me a lot of Ultra Janemba in the way that they dropped around the same time. They're both the Blue Ultra, and a lot of people consider him the best unit in the game. But I feel, for some reason, I just feel like he's gonna get hard countered soon. Not directly, but I think the Legends Festival units potentially, or even if they want to drop the Daima units. I don't think that, by the way, I don't think the Daima units are gonna be anything crazy. I think they're gonna be similar to like when Gamma 1 and Gamma 2 first dropped. They were like just a regular 1% sparking, and that's that. I think they're gonna save the LF and Ultra units from Daima for later on, maybe even a Legends Festival unit, who knows. But if they were to drop Daima characters for when the show actually drops, which is in a couple days, I don't think they're going to be like super meta relevant. But for now, Ultra Turles, I do think Turles might see a similar quote-unquote journey, I guess, as Ultra Janemba. Well, who knows? He is completely different from Janemba. This guy has something I feel is a lot more valuable, and that's a comeback. Comeback being one of the strongest mechanics in the game. There's no way to nullify it. There's no like anti-comeback mechanics similar to like how, you know, Super Saiyan 4 Gogeta can get Dragon Balls, destroy your Dragon Balls whatsoever when he pops a revival with his ultimate, or like Super Vegito gets 50% damage when he pops a revival. There's no unit that has like a anti-comeback mechanic that gets buffs like that, right? So for now, comeback, there's nothing you can do to stop it. You have to use your ultimate, you have to kill the unit, you have to use whatever the case may be to deal with that. So that makes it very powerful. But this guy relies a lot on his unique gauge. Now, initially I thought, you know, you might like run out of his unique gauge fast because literally everything consumes his unique gauge by 20%. But I've never really encountered that problem. Like, he's always had unique gauge for me to consume because he gradually restores it when on standby. When he's on the battlefield, he gradually restores it. So whenever I feel like I need to consume some unique gauge, it's always there. So him having a low amount of unique gauge has never been an issue for me, so that's fine. It seems like he constantly just has cover null. because he's able to get it on entry, because on entry he's able to consume some unique gauge. When he uses the green card, he consumes unique gauge. Anytime he consumes unique gauge, he gets cover null, right? And it feels like I'm constantly in a state of cover nullification with this unit. I don't know if you guys felt that way if whenever using him, but that's just how I felt using him, right? And then he deals a lot of damage. His ultimate just seems to like nuke units. It's crazy. But obviously his biggest asset is the comeback. Well, pre-comeback, let's just talk about this a bit. He has really good sustaining. He heals every time the opponent combos. Really good. That ability to like constantly heal after combos is really powerful. You have units like Garlic Jr. that can do that, Omega Shenron, and they're able to sustain really well because of that. So that's really good. He unfortunately loses it post comeback, I believe, so he doesn't have the healing, but he does go neutral for damage sustained post comeback, so that's really helpful for him, especially against units like Omega Shenron, Evil Boo, you know, the green units running around, potentially every now and then Ultra Gohan as well. So there's that. But this comeback, man, once you if you're against this Turles and you have one unit left and you didn't pop his comeback, it's over. Just forfeit at that point, because there's nothing you can do. Reduces your vanish, reduces your key, destroys your card, seals your rush. You cannot do anything. You're forced to take the hit, and it's over. So that, in a 1v1 scenario with Turles pre-comeback, it's over. You lose. 1v2 scenario, let's say you swapped over to someone and he pops the comeback, you lose because you can't swap out of him. So that character is gone, and you're screwed in that case, right? So obviously you want to pop the Turles comeback while you still have a couple battle members left, because if you get into the last man position and you're fighting the Turles, you're kind of donezo, right? He has access to the best teams in the game. Obviously, Movie's powerful opponent. You can leader slot him on. You could leader slot him on any team if you want to. Obviously, that's fine. But his teammates, Omega Shenron, Golden Frieza, like I said, you can run him. Tree of Might Goku is like arguably the perfect partner for him. He just has access to so many good team options. So he just does a lot. He just does a lot. He has Vanish Restoration on his main ability, which is always a good thing, always a plus, right? Ultimate nukes, like I mentioned. It's hard for me to actually come up with a flaw for him. Obviously, I would say potentially the lack of healing post comeback is, you could argue, is a small flaw. He has really good card draw speed, which is nice, and he's just overall a very complete unit. Now, like I said, I do think that we might see like some sort of anti-comeback mechanic or something down the line, potentially during Legends Festival, because I don't think they want to let that type of mechanic run rampant for too long, where he just completely handicaps you once you kill him. By the way, I don't like these type of mechanics. I hated it with Golden Frieza. I hate it with this guy. I hate it with Gogeta. All these, oh, if you're playing the game, you get punished type of mechanics. I hate it. So, because essentially, you're winning the match, you're beating this Turles up, you're beating this Gogeta, you're beating Golden Frieza, you're beating these units up, and then you're forced to just lose after that. It's just, I don't like the way they do these mechanics. It's really stupid, but you know, it is what it is. They've done it. They're going to probably keep doing it, and it seems like this is the type of trend they're going to, where there's a lot of auto stuff, where there's a lot of hand holding, there's a lot of, if you're getting destroyed, well, here's a free bone or something. There's a lot of that, and it seems like it's going to be like that moving forward with all these units, and it's unfortunate, but it is the way it is. So that's that. So that's all I have to really say about Turles. I mean, I had a feeling that they were going to make him really good, simply because Turles is not like a popular character, right? No one's favorite character is Turles. Maybe there might be, but I don't think so, right? So you had to make him busted as fuck for people to summon. It happened with Super 17. Now, I would say Super 17 is maybe a bit more popular. I don't really know the popularity with these units. I know like fan favorite characters, Goku, Gohan, Fusions. Those are fan favorite units, right? But these guys are not fan favorite, so they have to make them better than what they would actually be for people to summon. And I had a feeling that Turles, going into this banner, I had a feeling that they were going to make him busted, and I think they did. He definitely deserves a spot at the number 1. You could argue potentially that he's like, I would say at the bare minimum, he's top 3. You don't need to have him at the number 1 spot. They're pretty close to each other, but at the bare minimum, I do think he's top 3. So that's for sure. I'm 100% sure about that. But anyway, that's going to be the top 10 list. Like I said, if you agree or disagree with this list, let me know in the comments. I'm interested to know what you guys have to say, so let me know.